Good morning. Uh, all right, so I've been thinking about this a long time and coming up with ideas of, setting place, all that. And I figure, well, one of my favorite times is in the morning. And that's because I'm able to get a little bit of time where I can just focus on me, say it that way. I have a newborn, an amazing family. I'm so blessed. I wear my girl dad shirt, but uh, people always ask me to say, don't you want a son? And I tell them like it's not that I'm against either one, but the moment my first daughter was placed in my arms, I just was overwhelmed with such joy and emotion, and I was just like I had tears coming down my face, and uh, younger Damien was very hard, very cold hearted. I had this wolf. I had this good wolf and this bad wolf. That's why I wear this wolf necklace. But I was just focused on the wrong thing. I was focused on money, women, just cars, houses, all that stuff. And at this time, I was living in Colorado and moved down to Texas to, like chase this dream, chase this dream of of you know luxury and cars and all this good stuff and all the things that make you happy, right? And the more I was here, the more I started to, you know, had a lot of alone time to spend, and I would sit in the balcony and I would talk to my younger brother, and we would talk about we look up at the stars. We would look up at the stars and just see the expanse of, different star systems, planets. And when you think about it, how big the universe is, and you're like, how did this stuff get here? You know, like what is this stuff about? What is going on here? Because at this time in my life, Damien is like staunch atheist, right? But I would enjoy conversations with any faith, religion, and I would just ask them like, why do you believe what you believe, right? And I said like, just because I grew up in the U.S., I'm probably going to be Christian. Comparatively, if I grew up somewhere else, I'm probably going to be something else. So, who's to say who's right or wrong? So, no one gave me any answers to say that. And outside of that, asking the questions of how we got here, I was like, there has, I just knew in my heart there was more to this life than just born, work, die. Like I felt in my heart there was something more to life. And this is all during the time where the movie uh The Secret came out. And if you're familiar with The Secret, yeah, all kinds of people on that show, like Bob Proctor, some amazing people that are talking about, how thoughts become things, right? And that's why I gravitated towards that. And this is all mixed bag, but we're having a coffee talk. So here we go. I had figured out that on the designer side, like how we're here, I don't walk through a neighborhood Okay. And look at the streets, the yards, the houses with foundations. You got doors, windows, roof, all the utilities behind it. And I gotta let someone in the room real quick. Hold on. Hey, Raylan, good morning. And by the way, we're recording, so if you don't want to be seen, I would just stay there. But I was talking about how my journey of life when I came down to Texas, and when I got here, I'm chasing women. This is funny because I'm talking to my bonus mom. I'm chasing, money, fame, trying to get an oil and gas business with my dad, and I'm here, and I just feel super empty, right? And like I said, I was hanging out with my brother on the balcony. We'd look up at the stars and look at just the design of life, like stars, different things in the sky, and just how we're all even here. Like if you remove all of the human things out of life, remove the human stuff out of it, and you just look at just how everything works. Nature, uh, a tree grows from a seed, becomes a tree, flowers, drops seed, and then becomes another tree. But the size of these things that this grow into these big expansive things. And so I had realized that everything in life is has a mathematical formula behind it, right? And what does that mean? Well, I'm discovering that the universe works in numbers, number one. Second thing, I figured out back on my other story of, if I'm walking through a neighborhood and I can see that there's design behind something, I would never walk. I mean, would you ever walk through your neighborhood and say that no one designed your neighborhood? You wouldn't say that. So how is this atheist guy trying to tell you that, you know, there is no creator? There can't be one. That's a hard story to pull. So, all right. So, next subject, because this is all about co creating your days. I come across this experiment, and it's called the double slit electron experiment. And basically, without boring you down the science route, they take this electron gun, they shoot it, and they see this wave. It hits the back wall, right? It has a little electron gun that's shooting the back wall. It's like hitting a wave, and it's a ripple effect. You got big, small, 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 smaller, and like, well, this is interesting. So let's create a little slit and see what it does then when you shoot the electron gun at it. Same thing. They take and cut two slits, and this tiny electron goes through one slit, hits the back wall. Other times it goes through another slit, hits the back wall. Other times it splits in half, realigns, hits the back wall, like completely random, all this stuff. And I'm like, why is this important? Well, I'm glad you asked. So take this measuring device to watch what happens on these electrons going through the slit hitting this back wall to see why it's doing what it's doing. And as soon as they start to measure it and observe it, it changes and goes through one slit all the time. Now, why is that important to this conversation? Well, it's because what that's saying is at the deepest level that we're at, like the quantum level, like the atoms, electrons, all that, the observer, all of us, we have an effect on that world, right? So if we don't watch it, it does whatever it wants to do. The things that create like physical matter, once we have visualize it, it changes. Okay, so how this all comes together is as soon as you take and you become the observer and you focus on an intention that brings that into your life. Okay. So this is not a religious conversation. Whatever you align with on the spiritual aspect, as far as God, consciousness, universe, we're just gonna have a blanket statement for that thing because you can't really just say, it's this or this because we're all connected, right? So when you start to realize that you, being the observer, have an impact, you have an impact on your own life, the game changes. And it also changes because at this point, you are now responsible for things in your life because you are bringing them into your life. That's the crazy part. So a lot of people get angry and they say, well, I would never bring this into my life. Which the moment I heard that, for me in my journey, because something had happened to me, and I was like, I would never, ever, ever do this on purpose to myself. And I got so mad. My ego was massive. And this is all side conversations, but I didn't respond. Internally, I was going crazy. And I took a moment. I realized all the decisions that I had been making had led me to this point. It wasn't someone else. It wasn't some man behind the curtain dictating my life, getting me to do or not do things and punish me for sinning or not sinning, all that. And it dawned on me. I'm like, hey, Damien, you are a part of this existence. So if I could speak to the younger generation, it's almost like we are in this VR game scenario of life. Like we're in this avatar of our body. Our soul is living in the physical body, experiencing life. And we get to use this computer to generate information. Also, we get to visualize things to then experience life in reality. And we get to grow, we get to know things, we get to feel, we get to touch, smell, taste, all these different things. And when you get to that point, you realize, well, if I've been bringing all this shitty things into my life, I can also bring really amazing things into my life because I'm so focused on scarcity, anxiety, hatred, anger, all these things that you don't really align with, but you're trained from a child to think this way. And then you get to watch the media, who, for the most part, you hear most of the shitty things that are happening, not the great things. There are some great things, don't get me wrong, but because we know that the news channels are owned by a handful of organizations, that information is then filtered into you, and then you watch their program, which is programming your mind. And so now, because you've watched this every day, over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, you are now trained to see, oh my gosh, this might happen to me. Oh my gosh, this might happen to me. Or you have these thoughts of anxiety, these thoughts of scarcity. A lot of us will watch, Fox or CNN, and that kind of tells you kind of your background of, how you feel about politics, religion, different aspects of it all, because that is your group. We don't realize that we're being trained by everybody else. So what I'm saying is when you get to the point where you realize, hopefully realize that this game of life is up to you. It's not this, hey, I'm here, I'm existing. Like you are the player, you are in control. So once you realize that your thoughts and your emotions, because your emotions are the amplifier, that's like the when you're in the car and you change the station, you get the right channel, like your heart, your emotion, that's the kind of the amplifier of your thoughts and your visualization. I can't talk, it's really. And when you put these two things together, your life changes, right? And so what do? Well, we got two things. Number one, because my journey started with, I wanted to get into mindset coaching, and it's like, all right, that's good. And then I went to an influencer course and learned a lot, a ton of information. Coach JV with 3-2 Warriors, amazing group. And I'm sitting there and I'm praying to God. I'm asking, please guide me in the direction that I need to go for this. And because I'm never, for me, I have, when I'm going to do something, I really have to be invested in it. Like not just here, but here. Like I really have to be into it. And the mindset part, I just wasn't really into that in the sense of like, hey, let's just talk about this all day, every day. Then, like I said, I was talking to God about this and I said, please bring things into my life that are going to, you know, not force me. They're going to navigate me into, the space that's it's for Damien to talk about. Because I feel like the things we've been through in life, you need to share that with other people. You know, we are here to help each other grow. And if I've been through something and I don't want you to go through something, or I want you to help yourself through it, then why would I keep that inside? So fast forward to one of my family members almost commit suicide. And we're all just kind of like just really shaken up on this one. And I call the individual and we have a good conversation. And immediately I'm like, all right, God's saying, mental health. So me being me, a major book reader, I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, I gotta learn more about this space. So I did. Learned a ton of information, and information on that I'll share with you in different videos because it's gonna be way too long. But I go through that space a lot, and then I realize I don't like talking about this stuff. It's kind of depressing, right? Like, how do you have a happy-go-lucky how do you have a happy-go-lucky conversation about mental health, which it is possible. So I'll say that. And then fast forward into I I am not enjoying life. This is later on in life in this journey. And I start having these thoughts. And I'm like, man, I really am not enjoying life, right? And I have no reason to not be happy. I have a beautiful wife, beautiful daughters, great family around me, house, 9 to 5 job, all the different things that most people would want. And there's something missing. And so my time, my alone time, my spiritual time, and meditation time is in the shower. So I go just I sit there and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to God, consciousness, universe, what do you want to call it? And I'm feeling these feelings of just not wanting to be here. And like, nothing inside me is going to take that fork in the road at all. You know, I love my family way too much. I would never ever do that. I would never let go like that. I know this life is a gift, but uh, the symptom I'm having, this is from learning the mental health space, the symptom that I'm having is really alarming. It's like, hey, you need to wake the fuck up, okay? Because something is going on inside that you need to deal with, but I didn't know how to pinpoint it. And going through things and um, going to a customer's house, my 9 to 5 job, I get a phone call, and my 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 uncle calls me, and so we have a great relationship, great individual, and he says you should go ahead and you should read this book. And I haven't told him about my internal battle right now. He recommends a book. It's Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. It's called Home with God. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. And and then I pull up to the customer's house and I walk inside, and these people are not from the US, which is fine. And I'm noticing these different figurines on their mantle. So I start asking questions. I'm like, what are these? And essentially, they're some Hindu figurines. And excuse me if I'm not naming these the right way, but that's just more of my own ignorance. And I started asking questions about this modality, this religion, their thoughts, how they operate, and how they work. And I'm talking to the most senior person in the house, and then the son walks out, and the son and I just kind of hit it off, and we're talking about life and experiences, and how we're here and how we got here, and we completely sidetrack on talking about the actual reason I'm there. But anyways, fast forward, he brings me into his office, and this individual has like 3 master's degrees from like Ivy League schools, and he also has this energy chart on his wall, and I started asking him about that. And that kind of brings this whole conversation of how thoughts become things and how we are related and inter intertwined with existence. Okay. And he says, Damien, I want to give you this book. And this he goes to somewhere else in the house and he grabs his book, and he he pulls this book out. And this is Home with God by Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. And the craziest part about this entire story is this is the book that my uncle recommended that I should read like 20 minutes prior to being here. So a lot of us have said, oh, yeah, that's just coincidence. I can 100% tell you my life experiences, which is my truth and my everything. There are no coincidences. Everything in your life is brought into your life based on your thoughts and your emotions collectively cross sectioning together in your reality. Okay. So those moments where you go random places and you come across that one person or that one thing happens that shifts your direction towards life, those aren't just random circumstances. Those are things that are meant for you. And for me, in my experience, that if you're asking for certain things, the universe will bring them into your life. And it's up to you to listen and see and feel. If we're not going to do that, then you're that driver on the highway that's not even looking at the road. You're just eyes are shut. But when your eyes are opened and you see these things happen to your life, you're like, oh my God, this is holy shit, I'm a part of this thing too. So this is the fast forward to how my prayer, my meditation, and my relationship with existence came, got me, pulled me out, brought me back to home base. I'll say it that way. So, like I said, I had extensive information, knowledge about mindset. I had extensive information, knowledge about mental health. And I have those things in my mind. I know what's going on. I understand that these are things that are symptoms, but something's missing. And for the longest time, the only focus I've ever had is how are we here? Why are we here? What's the whole point? And uh, I find it extremely strange that people don't care to ask that question, right? It's like, why would you be experiencing this existence and not ask how we even got here, why are we even here, or what's the point? So after I figured out that, you know, there was this thing called God, uh, I had realized that my relationship to that, I wanted to identify what that was. And this is going back prior to this experience when Damien's going after money, cars, women, all that. And everything in my life's been taken away from me. Everything. I'm living in this beautiful, massive house, got BMWs, Mercedes, pool in the back. And my life at this time in my life is just so empty. My family's falling apart. We're losing houses, cars, things of that sort, business. And I keep trying to fix things. It's not working. So I sit there and I'm like, oh, I could pray. This is atheist Damien talking at this point. Something might happen. I could not, but at least I gave that a shot. So I'll try it out. So obviously I'm in my feels at this moment and I'm like, well, God, if you're there, I need you. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I need you. And as I let that be. The next day, I get invited to church by an acquaintance. And this is one of those consequential things I was talking about earlier. I'm looking around, I'm like, someone's listening to me. I know it. And I go to church and back to the universe will place things in your path to let you know that you're on the right track. The first three people that I meet here are all from my home state, Colorado. Now, first person, okay, random. Second person, third person, uh, it's getting kind of weird. I'm in Texas right now. And fast forward to the beginning of the service, I go and I sit down second row. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. And the pastor turns around and to break the ice, he's, I'm Pastor Don, and here, go ahead and why don't you go preach? He offers me his Bible to go preach. And uh, I'm laughing in my head because I'm still not even sure I believe in this whole Jesus character yet. So you probably don't want me to preach to your church, but uh, anyways, I end up opening my heart to uh, to Jesus, and then I just dive into scripture, learning about it. I end up going to Bible college for about a year, learning a ton of information. And uh, fast forward in that situation, something happens where I decide to take the prodigal son approach and kind of leave the faith itself. And that ends up shifting my life in different ways, which we'll share a different time. But fast forward to today, in this home with God scenario, this book or this series was the icing on the cake for me. And the universe will speak to you in different ways. Like we are all our own individual people, and life will speak to you the way that you need to hear it. So my experience may be 100% different than yours, but it's what makes sense for you. And as I'm fast forwarding into my shower time and Damien's not wanting to be here time, existence is slowly showing me the things that I need to see. So my eyes are open, my heart is opened. And I then understand the true nature of an existence that is so unconditionally loving that my relationship with it has nothing to do with how many good tallies I get and how many bad tallies I get. It's all about my intention. And the things shared in these books are things I needed to hear. Okay. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, if if this is the universe, if this is consciousness, and I am a part of consciousness, I'm basically consciousness living in a physical body, experiencing this three-dimensional reality. Okay. And if you really understand what that means, it should really mess you up. And you're talking about you're taking shrooms and all the different psychedelics and not taking them. You're having this experience like, oh my goodness, like this is my hand. I make it open and close based on the thoughts that I'm thinking, like open, close, right? And so everything in life, you realize that your thoughts, the whole like I think therefore I am thing, thoughts become things. Like this whole thing, this whole existence is you co-creating your life. And when you realize that, the game changes. Okay. Because if you're a part of it, now you have a duty to then go internal, like I did, and go inside, and you have to go face your past traumas. And this is all bringing together the whole mental health space slash spiritual healing. You have to go internal. You have to go back to your past, which is really scary for a lot of people. There's some things that people do not want to deal with. They're like, oh well, if I just don't talk about it, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Or it's easier to not talk about it, or think about it, or feel it. So when the moment is right for you, I really encourage you to go and an internal journey back to the things that have hurt you so bad. And that's scary. I'm telling you. I encourage you to do that in a safe way, get professional help if that's the mode you want to take. For Damien and my life experiences, I did my own self-guided journey along with the universe guiding me along, which obviously brought me to this and then brought me to some mental health people, influencers, books, etc. And I pieced all this together and I realized that the symptoms I was having, you know, the anxiety, the depression, the sadness, all that were symptoms of what was going on internally with me. And those symptoms were making me think that I don't want to be here anymore. That's not at all who I am. I am, and my wife would tell you, probably the most stubborn person that she knows. And she's a redhead, but no offense to redheads. But, anyways, uh, the point is, once you go internal and deal with the things from past, let's just say that for me personally, I found out when I was like 17 that the person that I call dad was not my biological father, which for most people kind of like messed them up. But for me, he had always been in my life anyway. So I didn't know I didn't have a dad in that regard. And it didn't really phase me that much. But as I get into my adulthood side of things, I then start asking the questions like, well, why didn't this other person want me in their life? And then some of the different modalities behind growing up with my parents that impacted me from a trauma perspective. Uh, some had to deal with punishment, some had to deal with divorce, some had to deal with different aspects of that whole thing. And those things get carried on through life. And then I learned these things unknowingly. And now I'm an adult. And I bring this whole thing of luggage into my life and I dump that onto the person who I'm having a relationship with and expecting them to undump their stuff so we can undump together. But if you don't know that, how are you going to deal with it? And that's really the gist of why I have this platform because I'm someone that has the universe has used to go through and sift through all this stuff. That way I can bring it back to you and show you ways to navigate this life yourself. Because, like I said earlier, we're all different. We all experience this whole thing differently, but it's all intertwined. And the moment you realize that if you want things to come into your life, you have to remove stuff out of it. They do not serve you because there are times where you do not feel like you're in alignment, which was Damien. I knew I was out of alignment. I didn't know why. I knew I believed in God. I knew mental health, but something was missing. Well, the things I had not dealt with were finally manifesting themselves into my thoughts to make me not think I want to be here. Why the F would I not want to be here? I love my family. I love my life. I love experiencing it, but my brain was so weak and trying to convince me otherwise. I had to find out why. And so I did. And like I said, you may not be someone that can coach yourself along that way. I encourage you to find someone that can help you with that, but do it in a safe way, do it in a way that makes sense for you. And I really encourage you to have the courage to do that because those things from past do not make you who you think you are. Let me rephrase that. The things from your past do not make you who you are parts of your personality and the way you operate with life a result of that? Yes. But those things you're afraid of and those different triggers you experience and those fears you experience are not who you are. You have believed that's who you are because your ego makes you think that. But once you ask the question, why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? You have to ask the question, who is asking that question? The computer doesn't ask, why am I thinking what I'm thinking? The computer just thinks. So that should tell you that there's two of you. And once again, back to this wolf necklace, the old Native American story of there's two wolves inside of all of us, a good one and a bad one. They're fighting a battle, and the younger individual asks, well, which one wins? And the elder says, the one you feed. I wear this to remind myself of, I want to call it a battle. I'll say just to be aware of I am this soul living in a physical body, experiencing this three-dimensional reality, and I get to interact with all of you and life. And it's such a beautiful journey. And the things that come into your life are not meant to harm you, they're meant to bring things out in you. A lot of us spend so much time being upset with the universe, God, because they think it's out to get us. And the media and the way we grew up teaches us to be anxiety ridden, angry, depressed, hateful, because it's programming your mind to think a certain way. And if you think a certain way, then you react a certain way emotionally, which then your output is what it is. So the moment you realize that you are the driver of your life, that's a big responsibility, but it's not all at the same time because your mind may now be thinking, holy shit, now I have to be responsible for all these things. I'm part of this. Yeah. But I tell you what, all you have to do is just focus on one day at a time. That's it. Before you go to sleep, I want you to set in your mind, in your heart, visualize what you want to bring into your life for the next day. In the morning, I want you to think of three things you're grateful for. And when you start doing this, you start training your mind to think differently, to act differently. And the more you do that, the more you shift your life into a different narrative. You'll start to see things happening and brought into your life that change your life for the better. And that's what I mean by co-creating your day. When you start doing that, especially right before you go to bed, right when you wake up, that's before you go ahead and touch your cell phone and do all the things you do for the day. Because that's when your mind starts taking off and doing different things on its own. Those moments of before you go to sleep And when you wake up are those radio station moments where that's where the creativity, the artistry happens. And you really get to imprint your subconscious mind to think and feel and visualize things into your life. And you'll do this a couple times and you're like, holy shit, this works. It's crazy. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to start writing. When you take pen to paper, the reticular activating system, your mind, pen to paper, it creates this kind of concreteness in you. And whether it's getting things out or writing up your own, you know, dreams, manifestations, things you want, your goals, your aspirations, your brain sees that on paper. It's like, all right, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. You believe it. Like your mind believes that. So for you, I want that for you. And the biggest thing is, I can't make you want that, nor am I going to force you to want it. You have to want that. I'm just here as a vessel for questions, for recommendations, any help. If you need someone to push you, I am that person. But if you're not willing to show up and listen and put the work in, I am not that person. And that's okay. I love you either way. So I want to say thank you for listening to the coffee talk. There's many other things that are there to talk about, but I just I felt like I had to explain how I got to where I got to and why this co-creation thing makes sense. It's not just a term that I'm using. It's a truth experience that I've experienced within my own life. I know it's true because I experience it. It's just like you put the keys in the ignition and turn it, the engine turns on. You open the doorknob, open the door opens. 1 + 1 = 2. Your thoughts and your emotions become things, which means you now get to co-create your own life. And you have to get rid of the bullshit to bring in the good shit. All right. Okay. That's it for today. I love you. And we'll talk soon.